The following podcast contains subject matter that may be unsuitable for more sensible viewers. Views expressed here do not reflect that of any community that you would want to be a part of. Listener discretion is mandatory. Mama, what does trans mean?
No!
You did your best.
I know. Welcome back to Tranifesto, now a true crime podcast until Chelsea Manning gets released. I am one of your hosts, Madeline Hobbs. Today I am joined by...
Ree Carter, the big farter.
And Devalin Galloway, again.
And what rhymes with Galloway?
Amy, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of you on your transition and your name change. I promise not to dead name you any
Holy
further.
shit.
Whoa, yeah. Wow.
But no, Amy is still legally dead.
Yeah.
So,
and if she's somehow listening to this from beyond the grave, Amy, what the fuck? How dare you spend time with your family, not with us? Your real family. Yeah, Amy will be back. So those on Amy Gang, you're going to have to wait a bit longer until you get in Amy ASMR or whatever the fuck.
I'm honored to be the substitute.
You are Amy today.
the honorary Amy.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the sub.
So how are you at being an e-thought? Just if we're gonna actually, we should probably interview Devlin. Devlin, what are your qualifications as an e-thought?
I post many thirst traps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
My
okay,
boss
okay.
called me a thought the other day. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And where is your former employer?
Don't dox yourself.
Yeah, no, never mind.
Well, great, you're hired, which is great because we're going on to the next part, which is today's episode, which we are reviewing Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling, the, TV movie special that's on Netflix that recently came out, I think like 2 days ago even. And yeah, believe it or not, it's actually a pretty big deal. And for those of us like myself who watched the cartoon growing up, it was incredible, and we'll get into the reasons why for that shortly. But before we get into dissecting it, let's kind of bring everyone up to date on what actually happened. So, Ree?
So this takes place about 20 years after the end of the original Rocko's Modern Life show, which, to be completely honest, I didn't watch.
Yeah, well,
so
they launched themselves into fucking space at the end of the episode. Yeah.
So anyway, so they are, in fact, in space, flying around, having a good time. They're up there for about 20 years, just watching their favorite show, The Fatheads. And then they eventually figure out how to get back to Earth, because one of them had the go back to Earth button stuck to their butt, because Nickelodeon comedy.
You know what? Honestly, and also, too, just a little detail, the VHS tape that they put into the VHS player was orange like every other fucking Nickelodeon movie. For any
Oh
of
my
us
god,
who-
I didn't even
remember
realize
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I remember I had some, like, Rugrats VHS back in the day that were like that.
I remember the Rugrats PlayStation 1 game. Did you ever play that? It was fucking awesome. It was like
No, but that sounds amazing.
it was because like the whole idea was.
I remember a really bad one.
What was the bad one?
Wasn't the one like in Paris and like it's just
No.
basically broken?
No, okay, so sorry to interrupt the synopsis here, but I need to, like, okay, fuck it. I know there's, like, a lot of conversation about what is the best video game out there, and I still maintain, if it's not the best, it's gotta be one of the best, is the Rugrats video game for PlayStation 1, because, like, you started off in the house, and, like, depending on what section of the house you go to, it would start an entire game. So there was, like, flashlight, find ghosts, there was, like, a maze built entirely in a toy store. And at the end of it, if you beat everything, then you got to play as Reptar and, like, terrorize downtown and blow shit up.
Hell yeah.
It was still one of the greatest games. No queer representation, so we can't really review it on the show, but it was absolutely fantastic. Anyways.
So they get back to Earth, and it's, like, modern-ass times, and 20 years from then, so there's, drones and Starbucks and like ridiculous tech bullshit everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously like a parody of modern times the way that the original show was a parody of the 90s. Anyways, their neighbors, the big heads, so they're still around, and fucking what was it? Ed, that was the
Yeah, that was the
guy's
dad.
name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ed just fucks up and totally makes his company collapse because it recognizes that most American industry is based on bullshit lies and finance is a complete smoke and mirrors show.
Yeah, exactly. I love the fact that this actually like it took a really nice shot at capitalism. Again, still
it's a very class conscious show.
Yeah, like no, it's a again, don't want to spoil it, but like it does a very good job of maintaining that like kid like fun for it, but also like injecting more mature themes.
Yeah, it's just that like the fact that you look at it for more than 1 second and realize that everything is based on absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
So that falls apart, and Rocko's super bummed that the Fatheads hasn't been on TV for a long time. It just isn't around anymore, and he thinks that everything has changed so much. He wants to have one thing that's the same. So he wants them to put the Fatheads back on TV, hopefully, and uses the idea that it might save the company financially if they do it as like leverage.
Yeah.
But the creator of the show, who is the child of Ed, is gone missing. Went to go find themselves and was super sad. Which I was reading up on the show and is like kind of consistent with the character from the show. Was just kind of like always unhappy with their like circumstance.
Yeah,
super
like,
angry
always
a lot
trying
of the time too.
Yeah, angry, trying to like self-sabotage like all of their career choices and stuff. So went to go find themselves. Hadn't seen in a while, so they go try to find this person. They go do their whole montage around the world and eventually end up in the desert where they find a Fatheads ice cream truck.
Yeah.
So which run by the person who has apparently who they find has transitioned to be Rachel in that time and is quite happy out there selling ice cream bars. But Rocko tries to convince her to come back and help out, and kind of plays on Rachel's own nostalgia for her parents and everything. It's like, okay, I guess I can go back even if like things are kind of awkward and help out. So they go back, and then Ed, as soon as he sees Rachel, like fucking loses it, is like, no more change. I can't do this. I can't deal with this. And just is like, I don't even care if the company fails. Like, I just can't deal with this. And that's kind of the issue. And then Rachel goes off and like is like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna go back to selling ice cream. And some stuff happens, and then they have a good talk, and then they're like, oh, actually change is good. And then turns out the show is doing really, really well because Rachel like kind of again has a nostalgic trip and ends up making the show anyway, and it's doing really well. And then it was very specifically inspired by because part of it, and like obviously we'll talk more about it, but Rachel's character in the original show was always like the writer's like self-insertion character, and always like specifically jokes about his experience at like Nickelodeon and all the animation studios, and he voiced the character, and he still voiced it in this one. But in the character in this one uses like the specific nostalgic memory to inform the special that they make, and then Ed sees this and like is like, oh, this kid's still my kid, and everything's actually fine, and not much has actually changed, and they reunite. And then Rocco's upset because the special isn't exactly the same as it was before, and then everything works out in the end. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Yeah, no, it's like an absolutely fabulous show. I mean, just before we dive into it and the characters and the trans representation, like as a show by itself, it's fantastic. Like you don't even have to have watched much of Rocko beforehand to appreciate it. Like you'll understand more, and like Reese said, the original series was a satirical take on the 90s, and they've adapted that for now, but it's still like fantastic just to watch. Sit down. I mean, do hallucinogenics if you have them. Be just very careful when you do that, please.
I feel like a lot of the designs in this show would have a bad time with that.
Well, yes. I mean, hey, if any of our listeners do that, get back to us. We would be curious to know.
But like, because I actually had never seen any of Rocko's Modern Life before this. Like, for a long time, I was convinced that it was like one of those shows that was only in the States and never made it up here, because I saw a lot about it, but I never saw it on TV, and I watched a lot of cartoons when I was a kid.
Yeah, I saw it like randomly a couple episodes. Well, sorry, I ended up watching a lot of it, but I started by seeing a couple, and then like every Saturday morning on fucking cartoons, there was Rocko's Modern Life on there. Fucking B-52 singing, Rocko's Modern Life. It was such... Like I again, the show makes fun of the nostalgia of it, but it was very nostalgic watching it. Like they did a very good job of like sticking to what it was originally, and that I think is because like they had the original writer of the show. Lots of little things and details as well. For example,
so many little details.
It was hand drawn. This wasn't computer animated. That was why there was that whole section in there about making fun of fucking computer animated drawings and saying like there's no heart and soul, which they're absolutely right. Like I was just reading an article here. They hand painted the backgrounds, so.
Wow.
Yeah, so it still has that look and charm to it. Like we mentioned earlier, lots of things inside the show, like the callback with the orange cassette tape that pretty much all Nickelodeon films were on. Devlin, was there any other parts you wanted to bring up?
There's just like little details and callbacks to the original show, like characters appearing in the background, and like I think they kind of hinted at every major character in this special, and like what they've been up to. Like just like bringing back all the characters at the end, like all the family members that showed up, like what's his name? I can't remember the turtle's name right now.
Oh,
like Filbert's family?
Yeah, Filbert's family and wife and stuff like that. And
so do you know the story about the wife? I remember reading this somewhere.
No.
Was that because you saw that she has like a hook for a hand?
Yeah.
So specifically, it was the producers was like, hey, we need more female characters. We need a female character with a really good hook. So he just made a female character with a hook.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So like the show has literally always been like fucking goofing on like expectations and like
It's also always kind of being a little bit woke secretly in the background too.
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's the wokeness, and we'll get into that as well. But it's also nice, just like with so many things being like one of the parts that stood out for me was when they're in the beginning when they're in the movie theaters and it's that really funny scene where it's like the dark, edgy version of the superhero comic that he used to read back in the 90s. But in the 90s,
really, really big man or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But it was the whole idea, like back in the 90s, I remember the episode, it was just like, oh, this is my comic book. Oh, it's awesome. And like even in this, it made fun of it because they took this really innocent looking character. Like it was ridiculous. His power is like he had like time travel nipples. But they've turned it into like this really edgy show, and it was one of those things where it's like it's true. Like in the 90s, like you had like fucking Spawn came out. That was pretty edgy for comic book movies. But we also had like fucking Mario Brothers, which I still maintain.
Which I love. It's so good.
100%.
The Koopas are terrifying in that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nightmare fuel.
Oh fuck, 100%. But yeah, like it just calls out problems, but also at the same time it's absurd. Like I love the fact that it's absurd, and it's absurd in a way that like if there's plot holes or things like fucking Rachel just showing up in the middle of the desert that they crash land into, that's fine because that's all works within the fucking universe.
Also, I want to like see how much I love that one joke where it was like
culturally
where they were
ambiguous
like
pillows.
Yeah, the culturally like falling towards the desert, just the guy with all the fucking big thing of pillows, like pillows, culturally ambiguous pillows, soft and fluffy, and they just fall behind it, and they do that joke like twice.
It's so good. Again, this isn't like one of the other shows. It's I think part of what makes this episode refreshing, and I guess we'll get into the trans narrative. It's just like. Yeah, you know what? It's honestly just nice to see trans representation in absurdism, comedy, lighthearted cartoons. Like, I liked it because it was a very well done plot point. It wasn't even like a side part. It was actually part of the main storyline. But it
was like a core part of the narrative.
Exactly. But it was done in a way that made sense and didn't feel like it was shoehorned in there. Like the whole idea was just like the parallels between Rocko coming to terms with the fact that the world has changed and that's okay. There's the fucking Winds of Change character that exists. Rachel is now Rachel. And there's that beautiful moment where Rachel comes out to Rocko and Rocko's friends, and the reaction I found was perfect. Like it was just like they're like, cool, that's awesome. And they even got like a really cheesy trans joke in there too when they're about to take off because they're gonna go back to town to save O-Town, and one of the guys out the window, or I think Rocko says, let's head out, and the guy's like, Roger, and the other friend's just like, Roger, I thought their name was Rachel. It's like it's very cheesy and dad humor-esque, but it was so good.
Very well done.
The part I liked about that is there's this whole idea that like you can't make fun of like minority groups or whatever, and like you can't make fun of trans people or whatever, but like it's like, and this was something that was made by a cis person who just wanted to tell a story, include like trans people in their story, and like used his self-insert character to be like, let's just make this character a trans person because that would be fun. But then like, and then they made a dead name joke, and it was fine. It was good. It was funny. Like literally nobody on Earth had a problem with it.
Yeah, no, I liked it. And I mean, like, it's interesting because one of the things that we've brought up in this show before is just the fact that like cis actors playing trans characters is a problem, but I'm fine with this. Like, this episode had no problem. I mean, first off, it was like everything was tactfully handled. The story was surprisingly well written, and the fact that they could have done a lot of things wrong, and yet they somehow managed to avoid all of them. Like even like, for example, like the character has a deep voice, Rachel.
Yeah.
And because that was what the character had before. And I could have easily seen something like, oh, they changed their voice or something in there, but they didn't. So the absurdism is there and like the spirit of the show, but it's also like they're not the person who the writer is not trying to be something they're not with that character, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it's literally just like the character finally like found themselves, like has finally like, and then, but it's like still exactly the same, which also kind of feeds into like the whole narrative is about change and the fact that like, aside from the name and the aesthetics, this is like, maybe if you weren't even, if you like didn't have the visuals, it would literally just be a name change. Aside from that, like literally nothing about this character would change, which is kind of something that like, trans people say when they're transitioning, which I mean, obviously people either change or like stop putting on airs, which is like can be viewed as a type of change, but like are still fundamentally the same person.
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, like, it's also interesting to watch the parental reactions as well, because the dad just went, as soon as Rachel showed up, went flat out, no, change is bad, I don't like change. Was it like too much, a TMC or something, like too much change, they suffered from it. But the mom was just like all over it. Just like, I'm going to try to do her fucking voice. I'm just so happy for Rachel. I found these beautiful shoes. They're going to look so
That's
cute.
so accurate.
Go get none of your pack of smokes.
Yeah, exactly. Just imagine an 85-year-old woman who picked up smoking in uterus, and then that's pretty much what they sound like. But I like the way of like the showing both sides of what a parent's reaction could be to that, because like I find a lot of times it's either one more often than the other, but it's usually either it's like them all together. And the only other show I can think where the parents had a split reaction, one was good, one was bad, was in Brooklyn Nine-Nine when Rosa came out as bi, which we'll cover in another episode. I liked also too the fact that like the dad realized by the end that Rachel was still their child. There was when the movie was made, the big heads, there was jokes put in by Rachel about like the things they said growing up, and the dad looked back and just realized it's the same person and all those memories they just had. They're like, it's like the mom said, I'm just happy they're happy with themselves.
Which I mean, also
like,
I'm
not doing that voice again. Holy shit!
Like, and also like I mean, a lot of like trans people with positive experiences have had like female, like especially like I guess actually either way, like having family members come out and be like, oh, I can't wait to go clothes shopping with, or like whatever.
Yeah.
That's so wholesome.
Like being excited. Yeah, like a family members who are excited to participate in gender with like their trans like family members or friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there is a lot to celebrate in situations like this. Like, I don't know, it's cool. Like you get to finally figure out more of this person that you said you loved. So why wouldn't you just go fucking ham with them like the mom did? Go buy shoes, do stuff, buy clothes that maybe not be your style, but like, I don't know. There was a warm feeling throughout this. And even Rocko at the end, like realizing that he had to let go of the TV show being exactly the way it is, I thought was this great kind of overarching message of the show, which was just, you have to let go of the past, change is inevitable, and the only way to learn to be happy is to embrace change. Which actually, it's funny enough, Rhea, I believe it was your grandma you used to tell me, would say things about like when it came to transitions.
Oh, well, yeah, so it was when I came out to my grandma, she was basically said like, I'm too old to be surprised by anything.
Exactly.
Which is like words that I've like decided to live by.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because every time now I'm just like, yeah, no matter what life throws, now I'm just gonna be like, all right, cool, fine. Except Nazis. Fuck Nazis. Also, if anybody from Portland is listening, well done last weekend.
Good job.
Kudos.
Also this week. Also today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess also today. Oh yeah. We stand by the banana dancers. Absolutely, the banana dancers.
Yeah.
Stand those bananas.
We stand a banana.
Yeah. Exactly.
Stananas.
Stanana.
Rocco's line about change was like just a really good sentiment too. Just that it's okay. Like he's kind of sad about it, but in the end, it's like totally okay. And I think that's like just a really good narrative. I think for people who like struggle with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the, and again, a lot of the skewering and takes on there, but I think it was also like, it doesn't matter what the change is. Comes back to something that I used to say, which is like everybody goes through transition. Mine just involved gender. And like that was the same there. It's like everybody had to embrace change on some level and the world changes. And like then I think about it too, like Rocco's two friends were really happy. Why? Because they kind of just went with it. Like, yeah, there's the skewering of consumerism in terms of the iPhone or the O-phone 8, 9, 10 or some shit like that. But there's also the fact that like just because they just went with what was there, they became happy. And I think that's a really good message everyone can take away from this, to be quite honest. Like, transition, think of it less as like a gay thing and more as just change is inevitable. Things will be different tomorrow. We'll wake up and I have no idea what will happen. So why not just roll with it? It's more fun that way too.
So can we talk about how this episode like kind of, despite completely anticipating and addressing the blowback that it was going to get, still got that exact blowback it was going to get from the predictable crowd?
I actually haven't seen any blowback yet.
You got some blowback for us?
Well, I mean, I forget. Okay, well, I can't remember. Like, there was one like main fucking neckbeard post that was going around. I genuinely can't remember who it was, but like, oh fuck, I can't believe that the SJWs got to my favorite show.
Oh yeah, and, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, and there was like obviously a handful of that from like the usual crowd. But I think that like it's interesting because like the show, like the whole point was not necessarily like the show was about change, and that was the idea. And obviously this had nothing to do. It used the transition as a tool to talk about change, and it was more of a skewering of reboots more so than it was like anything to do with like gender. Like, yeah, that was just like an incredibly modern tool. Like, I mean, obviously trans people exist forever, blah, 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 but like it's an incredibly 21st century way to make fun of and to turn towards like the change between the 90s and now. Yeah. And obviously there was like the usual people being like, why isn't this reboot the exact same stuff as before, even though originally the show was class conscious and woke and all of that shit, but they added in this new thing that some people don't like because it's changed.
It's literally what happened in the episode.
Which is like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is this beautiful level of irony. And by the way, Rhea, I found that tweet that you were talking about.
Yeah.
This is from.
Please do a dramatic reading.
Yes. This is from @BiscuitBasher. Oh my God. These bastards did it! They revived my favorite childhood cartoon just to turn Ralph transgender? SJW Netflix takes another victim. Then they wonder why they're losing money. That Invader Zim special is doomed.
The bastards did it. They blew it up.
Yeah, and
hi,
you maniacs!
It all up.
No, but like it's also too. It was Joe Murray's fucking decision to make the character trans, and that's one of the top tweets.
This is what you do. This is how. Here, I'm just gonna tell you. This is how show writing works, and like this is a discussion for another time, whether or not like watching things becomes better or worse once you like learn how like the writing process for film and TV works, but. When you want to address something and you have a large cast of B characters, you take a B character and and apply this thing to them, and then use that, and that's how TV works. You're like, we should do a trans character instead of introducing a new trans character. We're like, okay, well, here's somebody like in any other show. That's how you do it. It's not even it's not the SJW shit. It's literally just a thing that exists in the world that if somebody wanted to put in a show, they're going to put in a show, and they're gonna just pick a random fucking B-side character to do it, like, which is not necessarily what happened in this time, but that's just how TV writing works.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no like, nothing changed. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the voice was still done by the same person.
Exactly.
Completely. I've seen this weird thing that people are doing that I don't know if it's in support or not, but people seem to be forgiving the fact that the trans character in this by saying, yeah, well, frogs in the real world change sex all the time.
Yeah.
Like, they keep...
Oh, piss off.
Yeah. They keep using that as why it's okay. They're like, it's a frog. They change sex in the wild in the real life. It's fine. I think it's like... Which is like weird cartoon biological essentialism in a weird way.
Well, I mean, I think it would be one thing if they used that in the show, like, as a gag or something, to be like, wow, how did you transition so quickly? It's like, I'm a frog. So it's easy. Like, I think, like, if it was part of the show, then I'd be like, okay, that's funny. That's a good use of your existing thing. But otherwise, again, it could have been literally any other character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just funny that people need, like, a reason to be like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those things where, like, if that was one of the thinking for Joe Murray, it's clever. Like, you could appreciate the cleverness, but I think we could all agree, too, Rocko's modern life, though skewering, modern life, is not really based in a reality world. Like, it's old, like, fucking slapstick humor. It's people falling down, eyes popping out of their heads. Like, shit like that. I like it. It's kind of like a nice callback, especially with everything going the way it does. Now I say it, actually, I think one of the reasons I like Rocko's modern life is because with everything that's been coming out as of late, it's tried to be more serious. Like I think back to, I love She-Ra. I love the She-Ra show, but there is a fairly serious, like, line that goes about the entire show, and it feels heavier, which is still good, but this, like, it was just, I was like a fucking kid watching cartoons again. Like, there was no shoehorn.
It's literally the same show.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, I'm back. It's an old pair of shoes. But there was new things in it, and I still felt the connection to it.
Yeah, it didn't have to get that heavy, because, I mean, a lot of this was a callback to a specific episode of Rocko, like the I Have No Son one, which was very much like Ed disowning Rachel, like, pre-transition for not following in the company line. So, like, the fact that disowning in this part was kind of consistent with the character, and it was like just a callback to this thing that has happened in the past. Like, Ed has disowned his child before, and Rachel has abandoned previous things due to being depressed before. Like, it was a very, like, even if it wasn't like, like maybe an intentional thing of like, hey, I want to do something trans because I want that to be better, more exposure, more representation, which I believe that the Joe must have done a certain amount. Like, if he's like, as much of a woke bae as you think, it could have just been like, okay, what's a thing that this character could do that is in the same line as the other ones? Change gender. And actually, even, consistent with the character, even if the character started transition and then was like, oh, actually, maybe this isn't for me, and like had like, and that was done in like a respectful, tasteful way, even that would be fine and consistent with the narrative.
Yeah, actually, and on that note too, in terms of why, another thing that could lead to why Joe Murray did such a good job, I'm just reading this directly. On Nickelodeon's suggestion, Murray consulted the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, to ensure that the script avoided any transphobic jokes or scenes. And also, additionally, Netflix had nothing to do with any creative decisions behind Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling. So, basically...
Amazing.
Yeah, so, like, Joe Murray did, first off, like, maintained all of it. He's like, I'm gonna do my shit. Consulted the right people. So that's the thing. It's like, if you want to be like a cishet writer for queer characters, do what Joe did. Go talk to the people. Be like, hey, I want to do this, and I want to do this tastefully. How do I do it? And he went to the experts, and it was fantastic.
It kind of shows what happens if you actually put the work in to like understanding what you're creating.
Exactly. And I know also too, I read an article that Joe Murray just said, like, it's, it's not about creating a statement. It's just like, he just thought that trans was a really good idea because it represents the idea of change and something that a lot of people are having difficulties with. It was just fun. It was a fun show. I felt like a kid again, but I could appreciate it as an adult. I watched it with the little one, and they fucking loved it. They're like, because they like the cartoons they watch nowadays are not as weird as this shit. So
yeah, what did they think actually? Like, what was that? Did they have any specific?
Yeah,
thoughts?
they thought it was funny. They laughed, but like they laughed. The little one is 7. So they watched it, and I asked them about the trans character in there, And like at the very end, and they went, oh yeah, there was one. Like, and that's perfect because the idea is like, you know, everybody can watch a movie and take away different things at different ages. I remember for me personally, I used to watch Spaceballs the movie all the time when I was little, and it wasn't until I was an adult I was like, wow, there's a lot more to this film. But like, it's good. Like, the kids will watch this and they're just introduced to a trans character, and it's not like shoehorned in there. For kids that don't know, they may ask a question or two, but like...
And plus, like, one thing I like about it is that it ties in, like, the transition to, like, a much more, like, universal emotion. Like, the way that it is, like, it's fundamentally about change, and it uses a trans character to, you know, inform that as, like, a catalyst for that discussion. Like, a lot of times people I don't think people empathize, like, with trans people as much as they want to on either side. Like, they kind of view it as its, like, own specific esoteric thing, and they don't necessarily, like, apply what is happening and what these other people are going through to their own experience. Like, they don't see how, like, transition is similar to their own, like,
Exactly.
changes. Like, they don't see how it's, like, similar to, like, their own interpretations of, like, gender or race or, like, spirituality or labor or, like, any of these other things that they see about themselves. They don't apply those, like, universal emotions to what these other people are going through.
It's scary to, like, have to question things in yourself that you feel are, like, absolutes. Like, for example, like, you know, gender, if we look at that, for example, like, the vast majority of the population is just like, I am born a guy or girl, and no matter what I become in life, no matter what I do, I am those things.
Well, it's the kind of, and it's the same with, like, you know, like, a lot of religious groups, like, you know, like, if you're, like, Jewish or Catholic or, like, a lot of these other, like, sort of very, like, baked-in religious, like, you know, of course, cultures, like, you are always going to be that, and especially, like, you know, before the advent of, like, mass communication, like, that was, you were also, like, no matter what you did and no matter what you do, you're always going to be whatever religion you grew up with. Or even, like, to the character of Rachel, like, in the I Have No Son episode, it was the family business. Like, they were disowned because they didn't follow the family business, because that was something that they were supposed to do. That was like a baked-in intrinsic thing.
And so anytime you have to question something about yourself that you feel rooted in, it's scary. And like, for cishet people, like, I get it. If you're, you know, for a lot of people, like, taking solace in gender is something we subconsciously find very comforting, but
it's easy to take for granted.
Exactly. But when you start to question it, like, we had to question it, all three of us here in different ways. We questioned it and we found the path that we had to find, non-binary, trans. But, like, you know, it says that person, if they see that sometimes and they're not, you know, used to that kind of thing, they'll start to question stuff in themselves. If you are born this way and, like, well, maybe you can change it. Maybe that isn't how you're supposed to be. And then people are like, well, you know, I like the idea and the overarching narrative, just like that everybody goes through transition in one way or another. Some people it involves gender, some people it involves careers. And we should encourage people to honestly try things that they think they're themselves. Is that not the point of life? This is more philosophical for the show than the show is usually. But, like, is that not the point?
Well, as David Hume says.
But that's the point. Like, the whole idea should be, like, life is the betterment of yourself, whatever that looks like. Be happy, healthy, and safe. Beyond that, just be yourself.
Well, it's kind of, but that's also kind of, like, you know, in opposition to, like, that sort of platonic ideal of everybody is destined to be something, and therefore, and society works best when everybody's, like, doing what they are destined to be, which is
nope, sorry, destiny don't exist.
yeah,
like, which is also, like, I think a much more conservative philosophy, and what a lot of conservative philosophy is based off
totally.
of.
We're on a tiny rock orbiting a giant explosion that's held in place, like, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nothing. Just fucking doesn't matter.
The entire universe is run on entropy. Have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. The universe is indifferent, but that's a good thing.
Wait, I remembered one little detail that I think is really neat for representation.
Yeah, go
littered throughout the episode, if you pay attention to color splashes, there are pride flags for different orientations all over the place.
Oh shit! Now I'm gonna back.
The lights that come out of Rachel's truck when she's working on the cartoon, the trans flag comes out and the pansexual flag comes out. It's the exact colors. And if you go through Twitter, people have noticed pride flags just in almost every scene throughout the show.
I fucking love you, Joe Murray. Jesus, I would love to get you on the fucking show. Holy shit. So we'll kind of wrap it up here with final thoughts. I mean, obviously, everyone can guess what our opinions on here, but does anybody have any final thoughts for the show?
Show good.
I stand.
Oh,
We stand.
100% we stand. Again, it was a great example of how to have trans as a narrative point done tastefully and universally applicable as well. And I like the fact that they kind of ran for the people that needed that extra push, they ran the trans narrative right beside Rocko's narrative of having difficulties accepting a new character in his favorite cartoon, which in that is meta because that's also commentation or that's also commenting on people who would have a problem with Ralph's character being technically a new character introduced. So there's so much meta to this. Holy shit. I gotta go back and watch this.
Good prediction.
Yeah. Joe Murray's a fucking genius. I hope they make more of this. I really do. So anyways, thanks all again for joining us. Again, we apologize for the release schedule of some of this stuff. Summer vacation has been something we would like to have taken off, and we honestly might even take off the rest of the summer until September. And Amy will be joining us back by then, but absolutely we love having Devlin on the show. Devlin, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Is there anything you want to plug before we get ready with our outros?
No, nothing really right now.
No?
We saw a very good band from Alberta called Still There last night at a show, and
They are sick and deserve your support.
deserve to be checked out.
Fuck yeah. I'll give them a shot afterwards. So yeah, I'm Madeline Hops. I'm at rabbit_is_dead on Twitch and Twitter. I just finished fucking a week's worth of grinding to get a cool gun in Destiny 2, and now my life is hollow and empty, so I'm learning 3D modeling.
My name is Ricarder at RHICARTER. I've been too depressed to do anything productive, so I've been working on my Crusader Kings 2 Empire. So I have officially Christianized all of Africa with my empire based in Morocco. It's like an Arabic speaking Christian empire. So that has most of Africa. So that's kind of cool. I will hopefully get over my slump and do cool things again one day.
Yeah, and also too, if anybody knows any D&D groups going, I'm looking for something. I'd like to play around for funsies. All right, perfect.
Just a round of D&D.
Just a round for everybody in the bar of D&D. Perfect. So thank you all again for joining us. And yeah, we'll probably be back to everything as usual in September. So until that point in time, we love you all, and we'll talk to you later. Okay, bye!
Bye!